Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us for today's Majlis program for the Isale Sawab of Marhum Mohamed Akber Hasham. Let us start today's program with Surah Yasin by Dr. Ali Manji.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون يصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنا يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم الفاتحة.
Ahsant. We shall now have Surah Mulk by Uncle Murtaza Jeta.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو يسير. ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير. وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهو تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير. وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبضن ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقا بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم بل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Ahsant. We shall now have Hadith Kissa by Mahdi Datu.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Should I tell you about the event of the Qissa, the event of the Prophet Qissa? He went to the house of his daughter Fatima and he asked for the Yamani Qissa. She covered him with the Yamani Qissa. His face shone like the full moon. Soon after, the others came to join him. Do you want to know who? Then King Hassan and greeted his mother. Salamun alayki ya Umma. I can smell the nice smell of my grandfather. So he joined him under the Qissa. Then King Hussein and greeted his mother. Salamun alayki ya Umma. I can smell the nice smell of my grandfather. So he joined him under the Qissa. Ali Amirul Mu'minin. Salamun alayki O Jannah, you are queen, sir. I can smell the nice smell, brother, cousin. So he joined him under the Qissa. And Fatima went real close to the Qissa. Salamun alayki, oh father, I can you gave me permission to now enter. Yes, she did enter the Qissa. All five gathered under the Qissa. Jibreel spoke up and said, Who, oh Allah, who are the luminous reality lying under the Qissa? They are the family of Fatima, her husband, sons, and father. They are the ones who are very perfectly purified. They are the Ahlul Bayt of Tahira, the Ahlul Bayt of Tahira. Salawat Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farjahum.
Thank you, Mahdi, for that beautiful recitation. We shall now have a qasida by Brother Mohamed Siddiq Jafar.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم ज़मीं पे मुअल्ला से आ रहे हैं हुसैन ज़मीं पे मुअल्ला से आ रहे हैं हुसैन फिजा में नूर की चादर बिछा रहे हैं हुसैन ज़मीं पे मुअल्ला से आ रहे हैं हुसैन फिजा में नूर की चादर बिछा रहे हैं हुसैन हटो हटो जरा फितरुस को रास्ता दे दो हटो हटो जरा फितरुस को रास्ता दे दो कि उसका बिगड़ा मुकद्दर बना रहे है हुसैन कि उसका बिगड़ा मुकद्दर बना रहे है हुसैन कुल अंबिया की وفا کو حسین کہتے ہیں، کل انبیاء کی وفا کو حسین کہتے ہیں، خدا کی خاص عطا کو حسین کہتے ہیں، کل انبیاء کی وفا کو حسین کہتے ہیں، خدا کی خاص عطا کو حسین کہتے ہیں، یزید نام ہے دنیا کی کل نجاست کا، یزید نام ہے دنیا کی کل نجاست کا، طہارتوں کے خدا کو حسین کہتے ہیں، طہارتوں کے خدا کو حسین کہتے ہیں، زمیں پیش معلا سے آ رہے ہیں حسین، زمیں پیش محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجہم۔ سورج نے ستاروں سے کہاں سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہاں سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہاں سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہاں سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہاں سب سے الگ ہے، شبیر کے خیمے کا دیا سب سے الگ ہے، شبیر کے خیمے کا دیا سب سے الگ ہے، جب حر نے کہا میری خطا سب سے الگ ہے، جب حر نے کہا میری خطا سب سے الگ ہے، مولا نے کہا میری عطا سب سے الگ ہے، مولا نے کہا میری عطا سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہا سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہا سب سے الگ ہے، جب پوچھا گیا کس کی ضیا سب سے الگ ہے، جب پوچھا گیا کس کی ضیا سب سے الگ ہے، تو کعبے نے کہا کرب و بلا سب سے الگ ہے، کعبے نے کہا کرب و بلا سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہا سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہا سب سے الگ ہے، شبیر تیرے در کی عطا کیا ہو بیاں جب، شبیر تیرے در کی عطا کیا ہو بیاں جب، بے شیر کے جھولے کی عطا سب سے الگ ہے، بے شیر کے جھولے کی عطا سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہا سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہا سب سے الگ ہے، محشر میں الگ کر کے ہمیں رب یہ کہے گا، محشر میں الگ کر کے ہمیں رب یہ کہے گا، ہاں فاطمہ زہرا کی دعا سب سے الگ ہے، ہاں فاطمہ زہرا کی دعا سب سے الگ ہے، سورج نے ستاروں سے کہا سب سے الگ ہے، सूरज ने सितारों से कहा सबसे अलग है, सूरज ने सितारों से कहा सबसे अलग है, शबीर के खैमे का दिया सबसे अलग है, शबीर के खैमे का दिया सबसे अलग है. محمد وآل محمد صلاة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم. الفاتح. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Mohammed. We shall now have the lecture by Brother Alijawad Hasham.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We've gathered over the last 40 or so days to reflect on the journey in this life and in the life after one's soul has passed from this temporal world. It is quite fitting that as we draw to an end, that we reflect on and learn from the life of one of our Imams who has left such a rich legacy for all of us, Imam Zainul Abidin. First and foremost, I'd like to extend our felicitations to the Holy Prophet and all our Imam on the birth of our fourth Imam, Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein Zainul Abidin. I would also like to dedicate the Sawab of this gathering to Dad, Marhum Mohamed Akber Hasham, and pray for his and all our Marhumeen's maghfirat, and that Allah places them amongst the chosen ones whose birth we are celebrating. It's quite coincidental that we dedicate today's Majlis to Dad, because as I reflected on the life of Imam Zainul Abidin, I realized that so many of his teachings were passed on to me through Dad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul. What I would like to share with all of you today is to perhaps clear one of the misconceptions that many of us have about our fourth Imam. Many a times when we hear about the fourth Imam, we get the impression of a sick and weak Imam who spent his life in du'as and in prostration, and perhaps an Imam who wasn't as involved in the politics of his time. And that's largely because that's what we hear in the majalis. And I would like to clear that misconception by focusing on what Imam Zainul Abidin did to reform the society that he lived in, and to put into perspective how that society was when he became the Imam. The Imam spent 35 years after Karbala, and he recognized that the people who were at the helm at that time were the same people who killed his father, the same people who would recite Ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu in their prayers. And so he was faced with this rather tricky situation where, politically he didn't have a lot of room to maneuver. And also his imamate came at a time when Islam was at its lowest ebb. Islam was in a state of death during the time of Yazid, and most of the people had forgotten the true Islam that the Holy Prophet had brought. So the Imam had this task of essentially reforming the entirety of the Islamic society. And he did that through a number of his actions. And those are the ones that I would like to focus on in our short talk today. He recognized that there were two things that he needed to do. One was he needed to reform the spiritual aspect of people, become a spiritual reformer of the Ummah, and also to change the direction of Islam, because the direction in which Islam was heading with Yazid was one that would have resulted, in the death of Islam. And so what did he do specifically to reform the society? It was about 4 or 5 things that I'll quickly go through. The first one was that he kept on purchasing servants. And once he purchased servants, he would teach them the origin of the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. He realized that the minds of the Arabs was so enclosed that even if you would hit it with a hammer, it wouldn't open up. It wouldn't take the message, the true message of Islam. And so he wanted to culture servants by teaching them the teachings of his grandfather. And indeed, by the end of his life, his servants were more religious than most of the Muslims who were born Muslims. Oftentimes, even in today's world, when we look at converts, we see a level of Islam and how they live as Muslims and practice Islam to be higher than those who were born Muslims. And it was no different during the time of the fourth Imam. And there are 3 stories that I would like to quickly mention that will bring this home, I hope. Uh, there was one time when the Imam was calling one of his servants. He called the servant the first time, he called him the second time, he called him the third time, and there was no response from the servant. And it wasn't until the 4th time that he called on the servant that the servant responded and he came to him. And so the Imam asked him, I called you 3 times. This was the 4th time I called you. Why did you not respond? Did you not hear that I was calling you? And the servant said, no, I did hear, but I wanted to taste the flavor of the mercy of Ali ibn al-Hussein. And he continued that with my previous master, if I did not respond the first time and then I would come to him, I would often get a beating. But the beauty of the Imam was even though he called him 3 or 4 times, when the servant came to the Imam still looked at him with humility, because the relationship that the Imam had with his servant was not a master-servant relationship, but rather the relationship of a friend with a friend. There was another occasion that further sheds light on this. There was once when one of his servants was pouring soup, hot soup, and by mistake, he spilled the soup and all of the soup fell on the Imam's robe. Any person would normally react to that and either get really angry or treat the servant in a rude manner. But once again, Imam shows us and reminds us that that servant is a fellow human being. He's not the property of a human being, but rather the trust of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he recognized that we are in a position of privilege, and therefore we need to treat others with humility. And so what happened after this occurred? The servant looked up to the face of Imam and he recited from the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والقاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. So the servant looks up to the Imam and what does he say? وَالْقَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ. And the Imam responds, I have restrained my anger. And the servant says, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. And the Imam says, I have forgiven you. And the servant ends with, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah loves the righteous. And Imam at that point says, you are free to go for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of this after he had poured the hot soup on the Imam. But what's beautiful about this is not really Imam's behavior, but rather the fact that the servant knew as much about the Quran as the Imam does. And this speaks to how the Imam brought servants so close to him and close to Allah that it wasn't a master-servant relationship, but rather that of a friend with a friend or a teacher with students. The servants were actually, the Imam used them as an avenue to spread Islam. The Imam would often ask his servants to go out and tell people about the Ahlul Bayt. And when they would return to him, he would ask them, so how did it go? And oftentimes they would say, you know, it wasn't very good. We spoke to the elders, but they just would not listen. And the Imam would tell them, leave the elders, go to the youth and talk to the youths. Talk to the youth about Rasulullah, about Imam Hassan, about Imam Hussein. Their hearts are more willing to take it. And so this is the first way in which the Imam, recognizing that he couldn't be as out in the open in terms of spreading Islam, used other means to spread Islam and to bring people back to the path of the Holy Prophet. The other way, and the one that we often hear of, is his magnificent book of supplications, Sahifa Sajadiyah. Indeed, there is no book of supplications like it. And the Imam would often say, dua is the weapon of the believer and the light of the heavens and the earth. In another hadith, when the Imam was asked, what is the distance between the heavens and the earth? The Imam responded that the distance between the heaven and the earth is the cry of an oppressed person in dua. So why did he write a book of dua? The reason he did that was because dua opens up a relationship between us and Allah. The Imam realized that, you know, after the death of his father and the state in which the Ummah was, they had lost their relationship with Allah in their lives. And it became a world of I, not a world of we. And so he wrote a book where there is quite literally dua for everything. There's dua for your mother, for your father, for someone who is ill, for the companions of the Prophet, for jihad, for quite literally every stage of life. There is 51 duas altogether in Sahifa Sajadiyah. But the question I would like to ask myself and all of us is, how much of this treasure trove have we actually dug into? How many of these du'as have we actually recited and pondered over and reflected on how Allah is the Imam Zainul Abidin is teaching us to create a relationship with Allah? Not the current pope, but an older pope. There was someone who had visited him, and he noticed that in the library of the pope there was a Sahifa Sajadiyah, and so he asked the pope, you know, what is this book? And the pope's response was profound. He said, I do not see a book of the Psalms of Dawood like this book of Psalms. The Psalms of Dawood is Zabur, and it has du'as. It's in the form of du'as. And it is Sahifa Sajadiyah that in the Ahlul Bayt is known as Zabur Ali Muhammad, because it is just like the Psalms of Prophet Dawood that the Imam has left for us. And then indeed, the other aspect, actually, before I go to that other aspect, just on the Sahifa Sajadiyah, there's one particular dua that we will soon be reciting during the month of Ramadan that I would like to highlight just a couple of points from. Dua Makarimul Akhlaq. One of the most beautiful duas in Sahifa Sajadiyah. It's a phenomenal dua, as I'm sure a lot of us have seen and read through. And there are 3 lines over there that in particular speak to the relations with the family members. Once again, the Imam at the time recognized that not only had people lost their relationship with Allah, but they also had lost relationship with their family members. They were willing to kill their own family members for their own personal benefit. And so there is a part in the dua that goes as, Oh Allah, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Oh Allah, change the hatred of my cousins into love for me, and change their stubbornness into freedom for me, and change their difficulty into ease for me. And once again, what the Imam is trying to highlight over here is the concept of Silatul Raham. Silatul Raham was something that was being broken, where brothers and sisters would not talk to each other, in-laws were having estranged relationships, And once again, these are concepts that didn't only happen in the past. These are situations that we often find ourselves with. So once again, by highlighting these aspects of what the Imam did during his time, what I'm trying to highlight is what are the lessons that we can learn from what he did so that we can incorporate it into our own lives. Indeed, it's hard for me not to think about Dad when I think about Silatul Raham, because that was one of the things that if you spoke to anyone, it was so important for him, where he ensured that all of the family was always together, and he did so much to develop the strengthen the bonds that we have within our family. Just going back to the importance of Makarimul Akhlaq, we know from the Holy Prophet that the Holy Prophet has said, Bu'ithu utimma makarimul akhlaq. I was sent to perfect the akhlaq of mankind. And the Imam recognized that the way for us to improve ourselves, for the way for the Ummah at that time to return back to Allah, was through perfecting our morals once again. One story about akhlaq, and then I'll go to the next aspect of what Imam brought. And that one, the story is about how one of the cousins of the Imam fell into some debt. And he would often ask, where is Zainul Abidin? Why is my cousin not helping me out? To the point that his cousin, the Imam's cousin, would start to abuse him publicly. And then after the Imam passed away, the cousin went to Imam Bakir and he said that there used to be a man who used to come out in the middle of the night wearing a hood, but he hasn't come for a few nights. Do you know where that person is? And at that point, Imam Bakir tells him, that was my father. That was your cousin who you used to abuse in the morning, and he would come out in the middle of the night and bring food to you. So once again, the du'as that the Imam left in Sahifa Sajadiyah were not something that he just said. It was something that he said, but then he would act on it after reading it in his dua. The other aspect that he has left with us that in the Ahlul Bayt is known as the Injil of the Ali Muhammad, and that is the Risalatul Hukuk. As we know, the Risalatul Hukuk is this really comprehensive rights where it talks about the rights that Allah has on us, that our father, that our mother, brother, sister, our stomach, our eyes, our fasting, prayers, non-Muslims, even to the extent that the right that the muazzin has on us. It quite literally covers every single aspect of our lives and highlights what are the rights that people have on us. We have the Declaration of Human Rights that came about, maybe 60 or 70 years ago. But 1,400 years ago, Risalatul Hukuk is something that the Imam left with us. And if you ask yourself and you think about the Declaration of Human Rights, it's not even as complete a declaration as the Risalatul Hukuk, because indeed it doesn't tell us anything about the rights that Allah has on us, that our soul has on us, that our eyes, hand, father or mother has on us. And so once again, similar to the Sahifa Sajadiyah, we need to look into these treasures that the Imam left for us. One of the favorite rights that is covered in Risalatul Hukuk for me, and that's not because we are dedicating the Sawab of this Majlis to Dad, but it is the right of the father. In the Risalatul Hukuk, the right of the father, the Imam expresses it as the right of your father is that you know that he is your root and that you are his branch. Without him, you would not be. Whenever you see anything in yourself which pleases you, know that your father is the root of its blessing upon you. So praise Allah and thank him in that measure, and there is no strength save in Allah. Oftentimes, and I consider myself guilty about this as well, we have accomplishments in life, and we see good in ourselves, and we often think of ourselves, and we feel good and proud about it. But what we don't realize is the source of all of that, the origin of that is the Father. And so the Imam reminds us that when we see it, that we remember where it's from, and we thank Allah for granting us those blessings. The fourth aspect that I'd like to quickly touch on, and there's a fifth one, and that will be the end of my talk. The fourth aspect that I would like to touch on, another way in which the Imam changed the society around him, was through his salah. Indeed, the three most famous names that we know of the Imam, one is As-Sajjad, one who is always in sujood. People would often come to the Imam and would say, your ibadah is so great. And the irony in that was that he would often respond to them that my ibadah is not half of the ibadah of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The other name that is the title of the Imam is Zainul Abidin. And that's actually a name that was given to the Imam by the Rasul, by the Holy Prophet, by Rasulullah. When the Holy Prophet had Imam Hussein on his lap, he told Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari that this Hussein will have a son by the name of Ali. And on the day of judgment, there will be a call, where is Zainul Abidin? And his son Ali will come forward and say, Ana Zainul Abidin. Just imagine, on the day of judgment, when we will all be over there, there will be a call like this made, and there will be this recognition of the adornment of the Abd of Allah, of the servants of Allah, that is Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein. The third title that he had, and once again, I will highlight how all of this was to reform the Ummah. The third title that he had was Zul Fafanat. Fafanat is the callousness in calluses that, in English, that's what we call, it's one of his titles that highlights the discipline that he had in his worship. Fafanat is referred to, when a camel grazes his knee, their knees on the ground, there is the skin that gets peeled off, that hangs out from their knee, because they are constantly going up and down and grazing their knee against the ground. The Imam, from the amount of prostration that he performed, he would often say, if only mankind would know how much reward there is in prostration, they would never lift their head from prostration. Due to the amount of prostration that the Imam did, there would be skin that would peel off his forehead. And the skin would look like, the hanging of the skin would look like the skin of a camel sticking out from his knee. And indeed, Imam Bakir has mentioned to us in a narration that twice in a year, the Imam would cut the skin sticking out from his forehead. The reason why the Imam had so much emphasis on prayer is because he recognized that when someone places the importance in prayers and has discipline in prayers, then all other aspects of his life have discipline and come in order. So once again, in as much as we hear that the Imam would always be in sujood and he would always be praying, there is this hidden wisdom in what he was trying to achieve, especially during that time when politically it was difficult for him to outwardly go out with his imamat, that all of these actions had a deeper meaning than what we often hear in the majalis. The fifth aspect that I would like to highlight, and I will wrap my lecture after that, is around his akhlaq. We talked about the dua and makarimul akhlaq, but in particular, I want to focus on his akhlaq as he lived with other people. During the time of the Imam, there were two people who especially bullied Imam and put Imam and the Ahlul Bayt through a lot of torture and hardships. One was Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi, and the other one was Hisham bin Ismail, who at one point was the governor of Medina. There is a story from the interaction of Imam and Hisham bin Ismail that for me just highlight the excellence of the Imam's akhlaq. His akhlaq was truly phenomenal. Hisham bin Ismail used to ask children to pelt things on the Imam. So when Imam would go out to the public, he would ask children to throw things at the Imam. And also when he would walk, he would often barge into the Imam in the streets. And this was something that he would do on a daily basis. The maternal uncle of Hisham bin Ismail was Abdul Malik bin Marwan, who was the governor of Medina at one point. At some point later, he was replaced by Walid, and Walid put Umar bin Abdul Aziz as the ruler of Medina. Umar sacked Hisham, and when he sacked Hisham, he caught him and he chained him to a wall. And then he called out to the people and he told them, whoever Hisham has been bad to, come out and take revenge from Hisham. And so on that day, the companions of the Imam came to the Imam and they were, excited that Hisham had been caught. And they tell Imam, do you know what happened? Hisham has been caught. What should we do now that he is caught? And so the Imam asks them, what are you thinking of doing? And their immediate thought was, shouldn't we take revenge on Hisham for all of the hardships that he put you through and the rest of the Muslims? And the response from Imam Zainul Abidin was truly astounding. The Imam tells his companions, go to Hisham and tell Hisham, oh Hisham, if you're hungry, then Zainul Abidin will feed you. And if you're thirsty, then I will quench your thirst. And if you have a loan, I will pay the loan for you. It's not surprising that the Imam's morals came out at each and every opportunity in his life, because the amount of time that he had spent in reflection of Allah is what made his morals be the way it was. There are so many other stories that I could mention about the morals of Imam, but I will leave us with one final one where I'm sure all of us have heard this story before. Hisham bin Abdul Malik was in the vicinity of the Kaaba, and he was actually trying really hard to get to the Hajar al-Aswad, but he was having a really hard time. And then suddenly at one point he saw everyone move to the side, this pathway open up for someone, and he saw that person go to Hajar al-Aswad, kiss the Hajar al-Aswad, and come out and go away. Hisham, of course, knew very well who that person was, but deliberately, he was really offended by what happened. And in a sarcastic tone, he asked, who was that person who people had shown so much preference and respect to? And Farazdak was next to him. And what he mentioned about the Imam was truly profound. Farazdak says, and this is a poem we have till date, it is someone whose footsteps are known by every place, and it is he who is known to the Bayt in Makkah, the most frequented sanctuary. It is he who is the son of the best of all men of God, and it is he who is the most pious and devout, the purest and most unstained, the chastest and the most righteous, a symbol for Islam. This is Ali bin Hussein, whose grandfather is the Holy Prophet, whose mother is Fatima, if you do not know who he is. Whosoever recognizes his God knows also the primacy and superiority of this man, because the religion has reached nations through this house. Kaaba is grasping to hold him as he walks towards the Kaaba. And actually, Farazdak, for these lines of poetry that are so famous, he was imprisoned. And when the Imam came to know about it, he went to Farazdak and he mentioned to Farazdak that I will pay for you to be released. And for us, that said, there is no need for that, for whatever I mentioned was only the truth, because there is no person who walks on this earth that is quite like you. And therefore, when we look at the life of the Imam and we look at all of these different angles of his life, whether it was how he treated his servants, or the Sahifa Sajjadiyah that he left with us, or the Risalatul Hukuk that he left with us, or his akhlaq, or just how he looked to reform society through his prayers, there is so many examples for us, so many things for us to learn as we reflect on his life. And therefore, I would like to end the Majlis today by making a prayer that we all reflect on the life of Imam Zainul Abidin. We take lessons from the life of Imam Zainul Abidin, incorporate it into our lives, so that we live the life of the Ahlul Bayt and we die in the path of the Ahlul Bayt. And once again, for all of our marhumin, and for Dad, that that Allah grants him maghfirat, that he places all of our marhumin in close proximity to our chosen ones, and grants them ease where they are right now. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Mamu, for this very relevant lecture. It takes me back to my earlier days, and I have vivid memories of how much time and effort Nana Bapa has put on all of us, and we hope to continue applying what he taught us for the rest of our lives. We shall now have Ziyat-e Ashura by Hussein Walji.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرته، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوسيم، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور، السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي هلت بفدائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت البلية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشيائهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله، إني سلم لمن صالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة، ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مرهون، ولعن الله بني أمية قاتبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجانا، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله شمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت والجماعة وتمكبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بمغالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونسب لك الحق وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم وأتقرب إلى الله ثم عليكم بمغالاتكم ومغالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحق وبالبراءة من أشيائهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي يكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبتني عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة. وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يؤتيني بمصابيبكم أفضل ما يؤتي مصابا بمصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رضيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله من صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن عاقلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لنا أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد العابدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مرهان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعنة منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالمغالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن الإصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر اللحد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى آل ابن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعنة مني وابدأ به أولا ثم لنا الثانية والثالثة والرابع. اللهم لن يزيد خامسا ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وابن سعد وشبرة وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مرهون إلى يوم القيامة. سجود. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم قضيته. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Please join me in reciting Amma Yujibu for all those who are sick and suffering around the world. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'a wa yakshifu su. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'a wa yakshifu su. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'a wa yakshifu su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. اللهم صل على محمد. Let us recite Surah Fatiha for Marhum Mohamed Akber Hasham and all Marhumin. Al-Fatiha. We shall inshallah see you again tomorrow at the same time.